Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Office Hours. I'm actually in my office for once. This feels a little weird, but I'm glad you guys are all here. I'm sure we'll talk to a bunch of you in the chat. So if you have any comments or questions or anything to add, please throw those in the comments. But first, you may see a familiar or maybe unfamiliar face standing next to me. His name's Karthik, and he has been a longtime friend of mine here in the world of Alexa. And I was so happy to get him on to join me here today. So Karthik, welcome.
Hey, Jeff. Hi. And I see a few familiar faces in the chat as well. So, hey, everyone.
Well, I'm glad you're here. And we're going to dig in a little bit to what's going on with you these days. But before we do that, there's a couple of things I want to share with the audience as we're waiting for people to come in and ask questions and things like that. So the first one is, for those of you that are into the world of space, you may have heard that NASA was supposed to launch a rocket yesterday. It was the first of 3 phases to send a manned mission back to the moon. It's called Artemis. And so Artemis 1 was supposed to go up yesterday. And part of what's going on the Artemis shuttle is that we built a version of Alexa that runs on board. And so Alexa was supposed to go to space yesterday. But space travel is very unpredictable. And as such, there was a slight leak that was happening from engine 3. There was too much hydrogen coming out of it, which probably seems like a bad thing if you're going to set everything on fire. And so they decided to postpone it. I think they're going to make an announcement today about when that launch will happen. But the earliest possible window would be this Friday. I don't know if that'll happen. They've got to figure out why that leak's happening and what they can do to correct it. But I just want to give you guys a quick update on that because I'm really excited to see Alexa in space and some of the things that they're going to try and do with it while it's up there. So that's my little Artemis update for you. All right. So Karthik, I've known you since, 2017, 2018. It's been a while.
That's right, yeah.
And you are based in India. Which city are you in?
I'm right now based out of Nagpur, which is kind of like is the exact center of India, apparently. So,
okay. The exact center of India. Very good. And when I first met you, you were one of the Alexa evangelists for the country of India, right? So you spent a lot of time there building community. I got to come over and speak at a community day that you put together with the community itself. And so it was like you and I have had quite a long history, but you have a new role now. I'd love for you to share with people kind of what team you're on now and what you're looking to be doing here in the future.
Sure. So, like you mentioned, I started my journey within Amazon as an evangelist in the India team, and then I moved over to being a solutions architect on the managed side, or typically handling partners for Indian brands in India. And then right now, and the role that I've joined is a solutions architect with the Alexa presentation language team, or rather the MultiModal team, as we call it. So yeah, that's my new role. And do you want me to talk a bit more about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to get a little understanding of exactly what you think you're going to be doing these days, and will we see more of you? All of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I hope to be more often on the office hours for sure. So yep, hopefully we'll see more of me here. On the role front, I think a lot of what I'll be doing is we know that multimodal experiences kind of increase engagement for our developers. So what I'll be doing mostly is that I'll be working with teams within Amazon who will be building Alexa presentation, who will be using Alexa presentation language to build really great experiences, as well as our developers who are joining us today, the community joining us today, and helping them understand the value of APL and get them to build really great APL experiences. So that's my job in a nutshell. So yeah, that's what I'll be doing, and hopefully over the next few months, I'll be able to share more details and able to share some more content, hopefully.
Perfect. Well, I am definitely looking forward to that, and I'm glad you're a little closer to the team. So it's good to have you. So we have a bunch of folks here in the crowd. We've got Kevin Evans, Lita Gemini. If you guys don't know Lita, Lita is Amanda. She has joined our team recently as our community manager. She's very well plugged in. She's been a developer. She's been an evangelist. She's been a professor. She's done all sorts of things. But for those of you on Twitch, if you see Lita Gemini, that is Amanda, who's on our team. And she's just recently started within the last month, 6 weeks, something like that. And I'm really glad that she's here. But time to start letting people know who she is and why she's here. I see Gavin Watson and Trey Last and Kevin Evans and Hawk 2000, Sina Rasta on LinkedIn. That's a new name to me. I see Brian Tarbox, and Brian, I saw a couple of questions you have, so I'll try to get to those in just a second. But Karthik, man, people are excited to see you here. That's always good news.
And I'm excited to see a few familiar faces as well. Welcome to the team, Lita. Not Amanda, sorry. Yeah.
All right. So the first piece is Brian Tarbox. He has some challenges with certification, and Brian mentioned these in the community Slack today. This is always my opportunity to mention Slack if you guys aren't familiar with it. We have a Slack community. I know a lot of the regulars that are here are aware of that, but if you're not aware, we have a Slack community. You can find it at alexa.design/Slack. You can jump in there. There's I think we're just over 2,700 people that are there and participating and talking and having conversations. But it's about a lot of the things that we talk about here, right? How do I solve this problem? Where do I do this thing? Has anybody tried to do this before? A good example of this is actually Karthik and I just had a conversation late last week about the idea that I want to build a skill that will allow me to grab, like office hours, grab the live video stream from Twitch or from YouTube or something like that and feed that directly into an APL document. What Karthik told me was, yeah, we can do that, but it's going to take me a little bit. We got to take our time to get together. So that kind of stuff, we're doing that all the time with other developers. This is a place you can do that specifically about Alexa. So if you haven't joined already, I highly recommend it. Okay, take that off. Let's go back to our questions because I want to. All I'm going to do here, I think, is empathize with Brian, but I'll read this out loud just because people can hear that they're having some of those same kinds of challenges. Brian says, skill certification is making me crazy. I just changed a flag in my skill.json and I got rejected because of a grammar error in the Spanish skill description for my skill. That error, even if it is an error, has passed 4 previous certifications. For recertification, they should only look at what's changed and we should get to ask for clarification. Brian, I really do agree with you. I think that the challenge might be that the people that are working on your certification case may not be in your same time zone or even able to respond in a reasonable way. But I think this is an interesting thing to bring up, and I'll mention this, your second piece here. In another case, they said that you didn't implement shopping flow actions, except that you say you did. My only options are 1, create a new contact us case and wait another week for clarification, or 2, resubmit and hope the next reviewer has a slightly different perspective. This can't be right. Man, I feel your pain. I've gone through a lot of this same kind of experience with certification where it feels inconsistent and hoping for a friendlier certification representative doesn't feel like the right strategy. So I've already highlighted these, and I'm gonna take these to our certification team to see what we can do about getting the certification team to think about ways that they can address these kinds of situations. I also just noticed that C# Fritz, a good friend of ours on Twitch, he spends a lot of time talking about C#, not surprisingly, but also Blazor and a number of other Microsoft development technologies, just dropped a raid over here. And so thank you all of you that might be joining here from C# Fritz's channel. I'm so glad that you're here. Let's see. So Brian, I'll follow up with you on Slack, but I can't make any promises, but what I can do is say that let's hope that this gets a ball rolling, that we can find some better answers for you in the future. All right. So let's see. Rockalok is here. Kevin Evans. Don is also empathizing with you on LinkedIn. It can be very frustrating when you're going through certification and you feel like you've got it right. I totally understand. Okay, so Cantus on Twitch says, hey, Jeff, I have an issue that is somewhat unrelated to today's talk. Maybe you have time for this later. And the thing is, they sent a link to our Slack, which is perfect. The conversation is already happening there, so I will check that out. But it says, in short, Sendaphone works fine on Android, but does not work on iOS. Maybe you have a look and forward me in the right direction. Well, Cantus, I will take a look. I'm not going to be able to do that here on air, but I will take a look, and I've flagged that for follow-up. So I will dig into that after our broadcast today, and see if there's anything I can find. At a minimum, what I'll try to do is find you the person on our product team that is intimately more familiar with that specific feature than I am, and we'll see if we can't get a conversation there. Okay, so Milton says, I want to know about streaming on APL. I thought you needed to use the audio player, video player, audio, video longer than 4 minutes because they don't close the skill. Karthik, do you have any thoughts on that? Because I have a skill that I found, but I'd love your perspective on kind of streaming video into an APL app.
Yeah, I think we can do it. I'm not sure what they're referring to when they say you cannot use that more than 4 minutes. Or
yeah, I think their perspective
yeah,
is
I mean, we would end up
longer
using
than 4
video
minutes.
app. Yeah, we would use a video player at the end of the day. That's what we'll need to use. And it can play for more than 4 minutes. I've used it in a couple of my skills. So if you pass a public stream video, it is possible that it can work out properly. Although I've done this quite a while back, so I don't have the exact implementation details, which is what Jeff, I mentioned that give me some time to kind of figure that out. But I do recollect that you can actually use APL to stream public channels, public TV streams, for example.
Okay. That's perfect. Yeah, I have found a skill, and I'm forgetting what the name of it is now. Let me actually look it up here while.
So if you are in the India region, and even in the US, there's this skill that I had helped a partner build. It's called Shemarumi Live Darshan. It's basically a live stream of popular temples in India, which would just stream, a live video feed from temples in India.
Cool. Okay, so I found the skill, and so the invocation name for this skill is live streaming. And the way that they have it set up is that you can ask it for a Twitch channel just with your voice, which can get complicated because a lot of channel names can be weird. But you can ask it for a Twitch channel, and if that channel is streaming, it will play the live stream for you. And I've played with this a little bit, and it does work. So I absolutely know that all of this is possible. What I don't know is how I actually do that, because I've done plenty with video before, but not with streaming video, specifically an Alexa skill. But I'll tell you that I have some reasons for this behind the scenes. One of them is that I want to build or maybe rebuild. I built a skill probably 2017 called Alexa Dev Tips. And the point of it was to provide a resource for developers that have questions about things like, hey, where can I find more information on, well, we were talking earlier about shopping actions or something like that, right? And it could send you a link. It could give you some base information, those kinds of things. But I thought it would also be interesting if Office Hours was currently live, that it could let you know, like, hey, do you want to watch the Office Hours episode? It happens to be live right now. Or you could even, we started building a search for previous versions of Office Hours so that you could actually query and say, hey, I want to find times where they've talked about this subject. And then it just brings up a list for you of all the different videos with timestamps for places where we've talked about that specific subject.
Yeah, so that would be super helpful.
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of things that we could do with a skill like this, but it comes down to, first, I want to understand how to do streaming video. And to be honest, like, I don't even know, I haven't dug into Twitch, but I haven't found a place where I can even see, like, what is the streaming, the video stream URL. Everything that it seems to use just points to, like, my channel name. And I need more than that. I need, like, the actual stream location. So
right,
lots and lots to figure out, but that's kind of where I'm at with that, Milton. So we'll get into it. Brian Tarbox would also like ask deploy. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the Alexa Skills Kit CLI, command line interface, the CLI is a way for you to build all of your skills locally. Alexa, stop. This is a way for you to use the CLI local in your terminal on your machine to be able to build your skills, and then also deploy them and push code and do whatever you need to do there. And as part of that CLI, one of the core commands that you use all the time is ask deploy. And this is what packages up your skill resources, your Lambda resources, deploys them to the appropriate places. And what Brian is asking is for code signing. And basically, what he's saying is this is a place where AWS and Alexa could work better together, because the ASK CLI is created by the Alexa team and not specific or bound to any specific service or anything related to AWS really at all. In fact, when you type ask deploy and you push your Lambda code, it's actually using the AWS CLI behind the scenes to push your code to the appropriate AWS resources. So they are separate entities and they do not necessarily have anything to do with each other. They just happen to chain themselves together when necessary. So Brian, I'll add that as a recommendation as well. And this gives me another opportunity to talk about things that you may not be aware of. I mentioned Slack earlier. This is another one. I saw a couple of conversations happening in Slack this morning where people were talking about, man, I wish that it did this or it had this capability. And if you're not using user voice today, this is kind of my endorsement of that service. So if you go to user voice, alexa.design/user voice, this is a place for you as the community of developers building for Alexa to submit your feature requests. Hey, I really wish it did this. Hey, I really wish we had this capability. What user voice does is aggregates and keeps all of that stuff in a public place. It allows all of us to go in and vote on the things that we think are the most important, which then becomes one kind of communal user voice for our product team to be able to see what is important to all of us. And while your one feature might be very important to you, we have to be able to make sure we can understand what's important to the largest number of developers. And so this is a really great way to not only get your ideas in front of the product team, but also give an opportunity for everybody here to kind of vote on your stuff and say, hey, does anybody else have this problem? Let's vote it up and make sure that it's in front of them. I have seen that there is a monthly report that goes to the product team that reviews all of the items that are there. So I know this is being used. It is some people have asked me if it's a dead end, and I absolutely will tell you that it is not. This is something that we are actively paying attention to. So if you have feature requests like what Brian was just asking about, I recommend user voice for that, at least as a starting point, and we can continue to try other things.
Actually, I think on that note, I've seen like what you were mentioning. I think on user voice, one of the most asked for feature was kind of like routine integration with skills, and we recently launched that at Alexa Live as well. So yeah, I think that is actually being picked up by our product teams.
Cool. All right, this is from an anonymous LinkedIn user. LinkedIn is kind of weird with the service we use here, where they have to actually allow StreamYard, which is the service we use to do our streaming. They have to allow StreamYard to see their name. So this just tells me that it's LinkedIn user, but I'm sure you'll know who you are when I start reading your question. And I think I'm probably going to kick this one to you, Karthik. So I'll read it out loud, and then if you want to take the question. They say, good morning. I asked this APL question in the past, but hopefully I can raise this again. I have an APL document with many touch wrapper components, and I wanted to add something like an index so that the Fire TV, the sequence of focus is controlled, that pressing right will put focus on the intended touch wrapper component. And at the moment, the nearest touch wrapper gets focus, and I can't control it. So just to take a quick step back before you answer that question, Karthik, for any of you that have done any web development, there's the idea of a tab index, which allows you to specify an order in which things are arranged on the screen when a user tabs through the controls. And I think that's what you're looking for, that same kind of tab index capability here, where I want to make sure that if they're on this thing, that if they go right or next, that should take them to whatever I think is next, not what the interface is deciding for them. So do you have any thoughts on this? This is specifically around using the Fire TV remote control to navigate an APL document.
Yeah, when I saw the question come in, I was smiling a bit because this is something that I've been dealing with internally as well. And so short answer is that until and unless I do not see the doc, I won't be able to really comment on the specifics here. But we've known historically that there are some issues typically with the focus on Fire TV in itself. So until and unless I don't have a doc, I may not be able to really confirm what's happening here. So maybe what we could do is, if you could join the Alexa Slack channel and put this document in the APL channel, maybe we could look at it and really guide you about what is going wrong here. But yes, Touch Wrapper and Fire TV remotes have historic issues that we are kind of working on. So yeah, that's all I can say at this moment. But it looks like they're not able to control the touch wrapper, which sounds about similar to an issue that I've been working on. So yeah, if they can reach out to us, maybe we can help out with that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
Just,
and Slack's definitely the best way to do that. We can continue the conversation there. So thanks for reaching out. Thank you for the answer, Karthik. And we're going to move on to Rockaloc's question here, which is, let me mark that. So Rockalock says, I have an Alexa skill that creates a custom list to which I can add items through the skill. Those items may be 240 characters long or more. The list displays correctly when in landscape mode on my iPad. However, it is truncated on the iPad in portrait mode, as well as on my iPhone in portrait orientation. I've not figured out how to change the settings for the Alexa app on my iPhone to enable it to switch to landscape orientation. And it says to be continued, so I'm going to scroll. The lock-unlock feature, accessible by wipe down from the upper right corner, doesn't affect it. The Alexa app will completely read the items. Also, the same truncated item will be displayed in its entirety from the to-do list in the portrait orientation on my iPhone if I read it in the to-do list. The primary purpose of my skill is to show the complete items on the Alexa app as a smartphone to another person. This flaw is undermining its value. Any help would be appreciated. So what I'm gathering from this, and Rockalock, again, if you have documents you can share, this is definitely an APL conversation discussion. I think that's what you didn't say APL, I don't think. But I'm assuming that you're using APL to create this custom list. So please correct me if I'm not correct. But it sounds to me like this is an orientation truncation problem, right, Karthik? This is the does APL get, like, I'm thinking about this device specifically, but I would imagine this would work on phones and tablets too. This device, the Echo Show 15, if I have it in portrait mode, I have that information in my JSON input. So I know, like, oh, I know the orientation of their screen, and I can arrange my APL to be able to handle that. And then if it's landscape, obviously I know that as well. Well, I guess the other question is, and this is something I always get caught up on, does the Alexa app support APL?
Not right now. No. So I'm not entirely So it looks like if they are using iPhone or Android, I'm not certain that that's being rendered through APL, and I don't think the landscape orientation would do anything on there through APL, as far as my knowledge goes.
Okay, so that makes more sense to me then. So they're using a traditional display template or something along those lines. And Rockalock, this is where it starts to get messy. Like, I want to help you with your problem, but seeing what you're doing certainly helps more. So this might be a conversation. If you haven't already started this conversation in Slack, if you can add me to the Slack conversation, if it's already there, or if not, if you want to start it, even in the general channel and tag me, I'd be happy to take a look at this. But my guess is for devices like iPads and phones, even Android devices, I would guess that it doesn't know anything about orientation.
Within the Alexa app, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we can continue to dig deeper. And you guys came strong today. A lot of hard questions. Tiamir on LinkedIn wants to know if there's any significant advantages to using APL over HTML5. There are some. Yes, there are, and I'll let Karthik describe those. But I want to be really clear here that when we talk about building interfaces for Alexa skills, the only option you have for HTML5 is for games. And if you try to use that interface for anything but a game, I don't think that you'll pass certification. So please keep that in mind. Now, let's talk a little bit about the benefits of APL over HTML5 on Alexa devices, Karthik.
Yeah, so I was going to lead with saying that HTML5 is just for games, but you already covered that. I think the most significant experience about APL is that APL is built for voice experiences, to support voice experiences, right? So a lot of what you will see is that APL is quite responsive and specifically made for Alexa multimodal devices or whatever partners choose to have APL on their screens, right? So it's more responsive, and it supports a lot of native properties, native features, like, for example, transformers and stuff like that, which helps you just build an end-to-end voice experience and also kind of tying deeper into your interaction model, right? So that's one thing: performance, the responsiveness. And I believe apart from that, we also have some really good developer tools to support you with that. And we have Alexa responsive layouts, which lets you get started pretty quickly so that you don't have to start from scratch. When you're kind of building an HTML5 skill, you may have to pull in other resources and make them, again, work on different devices. But with Alexa responsive layouts, you could just reuse them every now and then. So that's the significant advantage to using APL over HTML5, I would say.
Yeah, I think that the challenge for some people is that they have the mindset, right or wrong, that well, I already am an HTML5 developer, so the benefit to me is that I already have those skills. And learning how to build interfaces in APL, you and I can both agree, is there's a challenge. There's a learning curve to that. I've got to learn a new thing, and so I think that can be tricky sometimes. But I think once you get into it and you start playing with it, you'll realize it's actually pretty simple and straightforward, and in fact gives you a lot of power that you wouldn't have otherwise.
And that's a perfectly valid thought process to have, right? Like I'm pretty sure when when iPhone or any other platforms kind of came along, there was this entire discussion about native development or hybrid development, right? And it always comes up. It's at the end of the day, you need to choose what you're kind of optimizing for and what you really want out of it. But when you kind of go native is when you can really prioritize user experience and responsiveness, which is true, at least in APL's case, for sure.
Yeah. And I saw this historically. So just to give people a little background on me, I earlier in my career, I spent about 9 years at Microsoft. And during that time, I was there doing a lot of this same kind of work, but for things like Windows 8 and Windows Phone. And this was one of the first questions I received from everyone is, I want to build with CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. Like that's what I know. That's what I want to build with. Please don't make me use C# or Visual Basic or something like that to build all of my stuff. We also had this new markup language, visual interface called XAML. And that was kind of the defining interface that you were supposed to use for all of these new platforms. And it was the same argument, right? Everybody wants to use the thing they know. And I certainly didn't want to learn XAML and all the other things. Now, that being said, I really enjoyed XAML. I thought it had a lot of power and a lot of interesting benefits. It resembled, an HTML, XML kind of interface. And I think APL is just an evolution beyond that, which is, XML is super heavy and bulky to transport. JSON is far more compact and easier to manage, but it's basically the same idea. We have a very native ingestible engine that can handle these kinds of documents very quickly. And building HTML5 rendering engines, especially with all the bells and whistles that come with HTML5, is heavy. So there's pros and cons to all of it, but I think that's usually why you see these platforms have their own interface definitions. All right, that was a long story. Anyway, let's move on. This is actually something I haven't tried, Karthik, so I'd love for you to take a snap at this one. Does APL support an on-screen keyboard or a clock setting input for those that have problems speaking at time of day in response to a skill prompt? So I'm pretty sure you can do things like text boxes, and if there's a text box, then I think if you tap on it, you probably get a keyboard, right?
Yes, that's right. We have an edit text component, right? And I can maybe quickly share the link with you. But yeah, we have the edit text component. You can use the edit text component to take the user's input, and what you could do, and I think the question here is they want to support an on-screen keyboard or a clock setting input. So maybe use that and then build a sequencer on top of it with the two numbers like minutes and hours, so that someone could select it and then have a button. I think that is possible, yeah. So use an edit text, and on top of it, use a sequencer and kind of build a number kind of a component yourself and reuse it.
Got it.
That's, yeah.
But so what you're recommending, though, is that they're going to build their own component to handle this. I think the question that they were getting at was, like, if I use this device here, and I'm like setting up my device, right? There's a bunch of text box interfaces. If I tap on one of them, it brings a keyboard up automatically. Yeah. You're saying that we do not offer that in APL today.
Yes, we do not offer that in APL today.
So, the very short, direct answer to that question, Frank, is no. There is not an on-screen keyboard that you have access to. Although if we're not working on it, that's probably something that we should be looking into, because as we continue to evolve this interface and think about how people are interacting with these devices, tapping and typing is certainly a very effective, accurate way to get people to give you a specific bit of information that might be really, really hard with voice. And I'll give you a couple examples of that. Asking someone for their email address is really difficult with voice.
Right.
There's a number of bits and pieces that go with that. But if we could say, hey, what's your email address? And it says, I put something on the screen for you to type it in. That saves a whole lot of time. It does jump away from the voice-only interface, but it is a much more accurate way to collect someone's email address. Okay. Naveed on LinkedIn says, excuse me, but what is APL? It's a great question, Naveed, and I'm sorry that we haven't answered that yet for you. APL stands for Alexa Presentation Language, and it's basically a JSON markup language for defining the interfaces that you can create on devices that have screens for Alexa. That's my very short answer. Karthik, is there anything more you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered it. I think if I have to go by the bookish term, we call it as a visual design framework, which lets you build really voice responsive experiences with visual support. So that's how I would define it. Yeah.
All right, so we're revisiting Milton. He was talking earlier about having the streaming video and how that would work. And he said there's also the issue that once you use the audio player or the video player and are outside your skill, you have to use the fixed set of intents that Amazon defines and not the intents from your skill. For example, a user saying stop maps to the Amazon stop intent, where in my skill, it maps to the Amazon pause intent while outside when you're playing long audio or video. Very much agree, Milton. I think that this is something that I want to explore, because I think that there's a lot of opportunity to really take advantage of a lot of video streaming services. And that was one of the reasons that I wanted to explore this. Is all the code and everything that I'm building will be available open source on GitHub. You guys will be able to see what and how it's built and all that. So it's not just a, hey, I want to build a cool skill. It's also a, hey, I want to share a thing that I want all of you to go do also. Karthik shared with me the APL edit text docs. And so I'm going to add that here to the chat so all of you can find that. Let me get back to our questions.
And what I would want to mention there, and my colleague Kai is helping me out with this, is that I think what Frank was asking for was whether the on-screen keyboard kind of comes up. With the edit text, the on-screen keyboard comes up, if that answers the question.
Got it.
Yeah. So you could use an edit text and the on-screen keyboard comes up with that.
Cool. All right. So Sina Rasta on LinkedIn says, hi, do you know how I can get access to some research and data regarding human interaction with Alexa for my PhD thesis? While I don't have a specific destination or a specific place I can send you for that exact thing, we do actually have a website called Amazon.science. And on that science website, this is where all of our scientific work is done. So if you're looking for the research and the data and the information about what's going on behind the scenes as we think about building new things for Alexa or new interactions or whatever, the Amazon.science website has all sorts of interesting blog posts and articles and white papers and lots of information related to Alexa. So my recommendation would be check out Amazon.science, Sina, but I don't, otherwise I don't have a specific destination for you. I will tell you that there are a number of very high profile, distinguished scientists here at Amazon that are very visible, both on LinkedIn and on the Amazon Science website. And you might reach out to some of them. And I can't make any promises about what that discussion will lead to or what they can actually share. But that Amazon Science should be the place to look for some of that information. Hopefully that helps. All right. K-Man Studios wants to know, what circuit boards do we use in our devices? I actually don't know. I don't know that that's published anywhere, and I haven't cracked one of our devices open to take a look. So K-Man, I apologize. I don't know the answer to that question. Although I'm sure there's someone that's done a teardown of the devices. There's probably a fantastic video of somebody opening up an Echo Dot or an Echo Show and giving you that exact answer. But from Amazon's side, I don't have that answer for you. I apologize. Okay. Naveed said, honestly, I don't have any idea about APL. Today's the first time I've heard about it. Well, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you heard about it. APL's been around a little while. I think it came out probably not that far from when you and I first met, Karthik, probably 2018.
Yeah, I think it started.
The very first versions of it.
Yeah, I think it started. I mean, in the initial days, we had display templates and all of those things. And then somewhere roughly, if my memory serves me correct, I think somewhere around 2019 was when it started.
Okay.
2018, vague end of 2018, 2019, which is when I met one of our PMs working on APL, Arunjit. Shout out to Arun.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. So I would say somewhere around 2019 sounds about correct.
Okay. So, K-Man, I see a bunch of comments here, but I don't have the context for it. You say the first example phrase says this. The first example phrase provided for this skill does not follow this guideline. Please make sure both below. But I don't know. I don't have the context of what you're trying to do, though.
I think what he's mentioning is he has Alexa Open Instrument Trivia 2, or 2 as in the number 2 written in there in the ordinal. So Alexa Open Instrument Trivia 2. And maybe the validation console just mentioned that, hey, this does not follow the guideline because I'm not entirely sure. But I think I think you should not put
I don't know if
right?
he copied and pasted, but if your example phrase contains a number, a digit, that wouldn't be allowed. Those all your example phrases would need to be typed out as words. So TWO might help you get there. It's the same sound, right? But I'm pretty sure those all have to be typed out. So that could be what is causing you the problem. Although they could be clear about their instructions if that's the problem. But that's the first thing that stands out to me is that there's almost never a time when you're providing data to Alexa in your sample utterances, in your slots, in your phrases, anything where you're going to see a number. You're always going to type those numbers out. So that's what stands out to me looking at your example phrase. So hopefully that helps. Juan Pablo España is here on YouTube. And he says, I'm now working with an app for self-ordering kiosks. Is there a way to integrate my app with Alexa to improve the experience with these kiosks? Something like ordering with voice. And as a note, his app is built in Angular. So, yes. The problem with Alexa skills is they are kind of standalone apps. They do their own thing. So I don't think that you could embed an Alexa skill, for example, in your website and have it take action on your website. You could embed an Alexa skill directly in your mobile app or your website. That's doable today. But what you're doing is basically providing the voice experience, the voice interaction. But it wouldn't physically be doing anything locally in your browser. It would just be a way for them to talk. You could save stuff to a database. And I suppose, with the right asynchronous updates to your page, you could then pull data out of the database that was created by the Alexa skill and update the user's website. But you're not going to fill in a text box. That's the thing that I want to be clear about. So yes, I think you could do that. You're looking for Alexa for apps. That's the phrase that you're looking for. And that would allow you to do one of two things. One is talk to a device and open an app on your phone. A good example of this is, for those of you that are familiar with TikTok, I'm one of the young kids that uses that, but there's lots of people that use TikTok. And so there's a TikTok skill, and you can tell the skill to open the app on your phone, and it will do that for you. So that you can start your recording or whatever if you're slightly across the room and you want to get your dance moves just right. The other is, though, the ability to embed Alexa directly into your mobile app or your browser. And this is basically allowing you to kick off a voice experience on a device, not in the browser itself, not in the app itself. But the user can see like, oh, talk to Alexa. I tap on that thing. It'll ask them which device it wants to start the experience on. And then I could say this one, and it will start the conversation here. And now I'm talking with the Alexa skill that I found in a mobile app or on a website. So Alexa for apps is what you're looking for, I think.
Hey, I think.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I think we missed one question back there. It was again from a LinkedIn user. I think it says Ethan Richardson. I'm not sure if it was in response to, but it says
Ethan Richardson is the user's name because their LinkedIn name doesn't show up.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to read out that one?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's perfect. In APL, I was wondering if there's a way to access a binded data value in a layout from within another layout. At the moment, I have to use an invisible pager that I can change the page using commands and also change the bind value to the pager page number. Basically, I want to be able to reference the bind value of a different layout.
Yeah, so I think the short answer is yes, you can do that. I think if you have a layout and within that you have a layout and you're trying to access, any value that you define is accessible to all the child components, right? So it should be possible. Again, I'm not sure how they have set up their entire layouts and their entire document, but I'm guessing it should be. I'm certain it should be possible.
You may not have the answer to this. Again, there's, especially when we get into the APL world, there's so many things you can do in so many different ways. If you were doing that yourself, is there a way you would, like, let's say he's starting from scratch. Is there a way you'd recommend he construct it so that it would work?
Yeah, I think what I would suggest is that go to the documentation and create an APL, use a tool like APL Ninja maybe, and set up their documentation and share it with us on the APL channel, on the Slack channel.
Cool.
And both Kai, my colleague, and I are frequent. The APL team is there as well. So we could always come in and help some of those users.
Perfect. And he mentioned that in passing, but if you're not familiar with APL Ninja is a third-party website. It's not built by or run by Amazon in any way, but the website is apl.ninja. And on that website, you'll find lots of APL documents that people have created. And it's a way to find and interact and like consume stuff that other people have built. But obviously, there's the opportunity for you to also just take your document, throw it up there, and share it with other people as well. So APL Ninja is a fantastic little tool for that. It does rendering. It lets you see what the layout will look like. So if you're not already using APL Ninja, check it out. It's pretty cool. Okay. So Juan Pablo, I think I got that. And specifically, you're talking about self-ordering kiosks. If you're talking about food ordering, we did just announce at Alexa Live in July that we offer something new called the Food Ordering Kit. I believe it's still in private beta, which requires you to fill out a form and request access to it. And I'll see if I can't find a link for that, but you should be able to find it pretty easily if you search with Alexa Live in your terms. And the Food Ordering Kit simplifies a lot of the process of ordering food, right? Managing menus and creating an entire order and all that. So take a look at that if you haven't already won. And if the self-ordering is for something else, keep on the path you're on. But the Food Ordering Kit should help. Brian Tarbox, I'm not even sure I should read this out loud, but I will. Brian Tarbox says, APL is awesome because you can edit the JSON and 100% bypass your recertification. Yeah, you can do that. The thing to remember, and I'm a good example of this, is I built a skill a while back. Before I redid my whole background here, I had a lamp, and it had a LifeX LED bulb in it. You could change it to any color. And so I built a little Alexa skill that gave you some information about like where to find me on Twitter and some other nonsense. But one of the things you could do was say, change the light. And it would let you, as the viewer, change the light that was in my background as I was streaming. I thought it was kind of a cool interactive thing we could do. And the name of my skill was Jeff Blankenburg. I thought it was cool. Like, ask Jeff Blankenburg to change the light to green. Like that seemed like a cool kind of interaction model. And I published the skill, and it was used for well over a month. Where people were using it and playing it with it. I'd made no updates, no new pushes, no new certifications. And I got an email saying, hey, we just took your skill down. And the reason for that was I knew I was breaking a rule, but I was surprised that I got through certification. And then I was like, awesome, we're just going to go with this. you can't have someone's name as the invocation name of your skill. And so I knew that I had broken the rule, and I understood. I was just hoping that maybe they were giving me a pass. They weren't. And so about a month later, they realized their mistake and pulled my skill from the store. So the reason that I'm telling this story is twofold. First, K-Man Studios asked, what is an invocation name? The invocation name is the words that a user has to say in order to open your skill. So in the case of Jeff Blankenburg, it would have been like, I won't say the A word, but open Jeff Blankenburg. Or I have my Star Wars skill that we've mentioned on here before. And that's, open the unofficial Star Wars databank. All of that is the invocation, not the open part, but whatever the name of your skill is. And in this case, it happened to be Jeff Blankenburg. But the other part of the story is that just because you can change something outside of going through another certification, you can also update slot values. You can do a bunch of other stuff that doesn't actually require going through certification again. That does not mean that you're safe. And it doesn't mean that they won't catch that thing later. You might get away with it for a few weeks or so. But that stuff is all constantly being reviewed. And so I would recommend, if it's a certification rule, that you make sure you're adhering to the certification rule. But as Brian mentioned, it is nice because I can make updates without having to go through certification every time. And so as long as you're still following the rules of certification, I think that that's a fantastic thing to talk about.
Okay. And if it can happen to Jeff, it can definitely happen to someone else too.
Yeah, for sure. And David Curley even said, or you could even store your JSON in an S3 bucket and bypass your deployments. Totally agree. There's lots and lots of ways to get around some of the bits of certification. The key things that certification is there for is obviously to make sure you're following all the rules, but also to make sure that your voice model works in the way that your users will expect it to. One of the things that we found is that if your skill doesn't work well, people aren't going to use it. And so oftentimes it's just a benefit to you to have a team of people go through your skill, try to use it, try to think about those voice interactions and make sure that they work properly the way a customer would expect them to. But that's my long story about certification. I don't always agree with their decisions, but I do understand them. And they're there with the best possible intentions. All right. So Milton says, I can figure out the orientation in APL. There's an event for it, but I need to send a send event command and read it from the user event. How could I trigger that from receiving a voice intent? Is there a better way to get that data to the back end? I think you get orientation data just in the JSON input. So any voice interaction would also contain the orientation, right, Karthik?
Yeah, and I think the request that we get, right, the voice request, the request document, or the request JSON that comes in, yeah, like you mentioned, I think it sends the device viewport characteristics as well, right? So you could get the height and you could get the width, and if it is greater, then the height is greater than its portrait, and then I'm guessing that's when they could trigger that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so what I would do is look at the request that's coming in, look at the context, and get the device viewports from there, and measure the width and height, and then use that rather than sending it through the send event and the user event command. And
yeah,
again, I don't have access to the documentation right now, but I'm guessing that should work. So yeah.
Okay, so there was another question kind of funneling through here. K-Man is still struggling with these example phrases. The other thing to keep in mind, I think I know the other reason that you might be failing this. So I want to take a quick journey with everybody. When you build your skill, you build a bunch of intents and utterances that represent the things that you think a user will say. And then when you're ready to certify your skill, you go and create a whole bunch of descriptive information about what your skill is, right? There's a skill description and a name, and there's some sample phrases. And I think that's what K-Man's working on right now, is that there are 3 text boxes that are designed specifically to capture your perfect phrases, right? The things that you want people to try the first time that they use your skill. And so in each of those boxes, you have to provide some sort of interaction. Generally, what I do is my first one is just my invocation name. So it'll be something like open unofficial Star Wars databank. And that's it. But I could also show them and give them an example that allows them to jump right to something they might be interested in. So I might also say, tell me about Chewbacca, right? Doesn't have my invocation name, doesn't have any of the other stuff, but it is a phrase that works. And then there might be a third one that is, show me the opening crawl from episode 4. This is also a thing that my skill will do, is it'll show you all those, the yellow words that scroll by in a Star Wars movie. It'll show you any one of those. So these are all different things that my skill can do. The important thing to remember is that I need to actually support those phrases in my interaction model, in those intents and utterances that I have. And so, K-Man, my suspicion now, I apologize for not noticing this the first time, is that you're working on your sample phrases and you're doing the automated testing and it's telling you that it's failing. The reason that it's failing is because that phrase, open instrument trivia 2, and you did say earlier, what is an invocation name? So that's also my suspicion, is that you haven't changed this. If your skill is called instrument trivia 2, then in your invocation, which you'll see on the build tab of the developer console, there's a place that is your invocation name. If you've never changed this, it's probably change me. That's probably the name of your invocation name right now. You just need to change that to instrument trivia 2 with the word, not the number. But if you have additional phrases, things like open instrument trivia 2 and tell me about the trombone, or ask me a question about the trombone, or whatever your instrument trivia does, those phrases have to exactly match what happens in your interaction model. So I should be able to jump over to my interaction model and find that exact same phrase. And if they don't match word for word, space for space, everything, then the automated test will fail, because it's looking for an exact replica of the sample phrase that you provided. So again, very, very long story. Hopefully that helps. But my suspicion is between your invocation name, because that's what your sample phrase is, and your sample utterances, that's where you're getting hung up. If that doesn't work, K-Man, hit me up on Slack, and we'll see if we can't just jump on a call or something and figure that out. Okay. I think this is, oh yeah, Ethan again says, in Alexa shopping actions, why could you not sell items that have different sizes like clothes? I'll give you the answer I think is right. I don't know that I'm correct, but this is a suspicion that I have. So I need to wrap all of this in. This is Jeff's opinion. This is not Amazon's specific perspective on this, because I don't know the answer. I know that there are categories of things that you can't sell. My suspicion is ordering something like a t-shirt that comes in sizes and colors, and you start to really, can expand all the choices that you need to make for a specific product, creates a very complicated voice interaction. And my suspicion is that they will find ways to include that stuff in the future. But for now, having just launched shopping actions, I think they're looking for simple, like, I want that board game. Well, the board game doesn't come in 10 colors, 10 sizes, whatever. The board game comes as the board game does, right? Or a specific wrench or something like that. So those are the kinds of products that I think they've optimized for now, is that I just want that thing, and it doesn't vary. But when there are tons of variations or versions of the same thing, I think that introduces a level of complexity that Alexa shopping actions isn't ready for yet. But again, entirely my suspicion and opinion. I don't actually know the real answer. I think that's just what I'm thinking. Okay, I am going to... Juan Pablo on YouTube says he can't find the food ordering kit. So, Karthik, I'm going to dig here really quick. I don't know if you have any thoughts on... I was hoping to give you like another thing. Well, Dave Curley just had something talking about certification. He says, I had the certification failure talking about where it's just a slight wording difference for a one-shot invocation. I had added as an example phrase. Do you have any nightmare stories from certification, Karthik, that you've run into?
Yeah, quite a few. And I think some of this, I think the most irritating one always has to be when you are kind of, and this kind of happened recently, without divulging enough details, but what happens is when you're kind of building a skill which is working on features that are not yet privately or publicly released, and then you have to kind of like submit it for certification. I guess it's a totally different type of pain, but the pain is explaining to the tester team or to the certification team that, hey, this is how you need to go through this certification, this entire feature. This is a totally new feature. So we would want you to approve the feature and then once it goes live, go and test it if it works fine or not, which is like a totally different kind of pain. But yeah, I mean, like the same kind of issues, like you approve a skill, the skill goes live, and then afterwards they find a certain flags. In fact, I was handling, and these are like normal skills, right? Like most of, I'm guessing, are normal skills. But when you start to work with skills where you have a banking or financial sector stuff in there, right? Like building a skill for bank. Like I've built like a couple of them, helped a couple of developer build bank skills. There are a lot of restrictions around what Alexa could say or what Alexa cannot say, and how it can say certain things, right? Like, for example, you cannot speak out someone's bank account number without them having to give the PIN number, right? And when you're doing that, it should be obfuscated on the, if it's a secret account number, it should be obfuscated in the multimodal responses or on the card, right? So I've had skills rejected multiple times because I always came from like the custom skills background. Okay, sure, just send the data out in the card, just print it out, right? But then you had to kind of like adapt it to certain business or banking, financial sector kind of skills. So I think that would be my pain stories, where most of my pain stories lie. But again, like you mentioned, at the end of the day, it's just good intentions that these teams have. So I totally understand where they come from. But yeah, lots of pains in the banking sector skills, at least, for sure.
Interesting. Okay, so thank you for sharing that story. I was also digging, trying to find information about the food ordering kit, and I have this page. So I'll drop this in the chat. This is the Alexa Live feature roundup. This came out in July, and it's a blog post, but it talks about all the things that we announced, and one of them is updates to the food skill APIs. And there used to be a link to a developer interest form, but it doesn't seem to be there anymore. So I'm not sure what the current state of that is. I mean, it definitely exists, but I would have pointed you to this page, and you can see, for those of you that are looking for all the other cool things that we've released or announced, this is a place to find it. And you'll either find links to the tech docs or to what we call an interest form, developer interest form, where you can go say, hey, I really want to use this. Here's why I need it. And they'll work to get you involved. But the food ordering kit one doesn't have a link right now. So I'm not sure what has happened there, but I'll dig in and we'll figure that out. Maybe I'll have something to talk about this next week. So Juan Pablo, I'm gonna add this link to things I need to follow up on. But we are also at time. So first, Karthik, thank you so much for the time today. It is so nice. Like, it's nice to have somebody that I've known for so long, and like you and I can trust and know that, like, hey, he knows what he's talking about, and I know what I'm talking about. And like, we can kind of ping pong on some of these questions. So it was really great to have you here, and I hope we can do this more. But I certainly want to thank everybody in the audience as well. Your questions are fantastic, and it's always amazing to me how many interesting problems and questions and passionate things you guys have that you're working on. It's always so cool for me to be able to see what you guys are building. So thank you guys all for tuning in. We can't do this if nobody shows up, so I really do appreciate it. With that, if you want to continue the conversation in Slack, we will be there. We would love to be able to continue helping and solving some of these problems for you. And like I said, I've been documenting a bunch of the questions that you've had that we haven't had specific answers for. And we'll funnel those off to the product team here in the next hour or so, and hopefully get some answers by next week. So again, no promises. Sometimes things take longer than we'd like, but we are actively working and digging in on a lot of this stuff for you. So thank you guys all for tuning in. Thank you, Karthik, for being here. And we'll see you guys all next week. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.